I am 100%, he says. I have the risky pattern. In a sense, I'm a born killer. Quoted by a neuroscientist, Professor James Fallon. Professor Fallon was working on genetic tests and brain scan of Alzheimer's patients. During that time, he discovered how he is related with 7 supposed murderers. Among them is one of the most notorious suspected killer in the United States history, Lizzie Borden. Despite her acquittal, she became the subject of one of the most popular skipping rope rhymes in America. Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. This simple accident had led to the biggest discovery of how human brains and genetics can influence heavily on individual action. On a side note, even though Professor Fallon was born into a family tree full with murderers, but he apparently not grew into one of them, and even have a successful career and live in a very happy, functional family to society. So what causing all of this to happen, and how we as society can prevent this from happening? Is it hard? Is it challenging? Is it unavoidable? Or entirely it is possible to fix? Now, don't you worry. Throughout the time span of this video, I will make this topic progressively clear until the end of the video. Now the path is clear, let's break down the term of nurture. How by this term can actually make big differences to a society and as well as big as a country. Nurture is a concept of highlighting the importance of social environment on who you are with and not who you are born to. This also significant influence on social emotional skill, well-being and behavior. If we get into the data, homicide cases in US was skyrocketing in 2020, jumping to 29.4% increasement per 100,000 per people in that year. Sure, pandemic at that moment was just starting to warming up, but how other countries like Japan, who homicide cases dropped about 9.7% in that same year? In closer inspection, this seemed to be deeply rooted explanation on how differently both countries raise their children or their quote-unquote young generation. Now, let's relate that to Professor Fallon's story, who was working on genetic tests and brain scan of Alzheimer's patient. He then comparing them to the result for his family, who was used as control group. Professor Fallon was utterly in shock when he flicking through the brain scan among his family members and found that every member of his family had a low violence genetic structure except one, Professor Fallon himself. Examining his own brain scan, he saw the same killer pattern. His brain has dark patches of low activity just behind the eyes, in that crucial orbital cortex area. He also quoted, people with low activity in that area of the brain are freewheeling types or sociopaths. Professor Fallon himself claimed that he would never hurt a fly, despite having an overwhelming genetic and neurological tendency towards sociopath. He then proceeded to quote-unquote, I was loved and that has protected me. That's when the terms nurture took place. Professor Fallon grew up with a loving parent. This act of love had immediately cancelled out the act of violence that he was naturally born in. Through this discovery, homicides and crime rates can be avoidable. But how? Well, to settle this down, we will inspect closer on how this happened. It all started from home and a child. A person or adult bad behavior or action had quite relation to their past experience. As a child, an abused, neglected child is more likely to grow to become a threat to society. But not all abused child will confirm to be future serial killers. According to criminologist Dr. Adrian Rain, both biologic nature and social factor nurture contribute to the making of murderer. In his research, more than 100 twin abduction analyses showed about that 50% variance in antisocial behavior is attributable to genetic influences. Also added those with specific variant of enzyme monoamine oxidase, a gene that more prone to displaying violent behavior if they had an abusive upbringing. However, having this enzyme does not make them 100% to be in path of criminal or a murderer. Some might successfully have a great career because they grew up in a very loving and caring household. It seems like this sociopath shares similar pattern who most likely drove them to become a serial killer. This sociopath displayed severe childhood neglect patterns developed from their birth through their lifetime. Most of these sociopaths had poor relationship with their mother and consequently never learned appropriate ways to relate to other human beings. Childhood problems at home, unsupervised school system that unwillingly or unable to help, and inability of the person to relate sexually in a normal way to others is almost as a formula for producing a deviant personality. How can we as an individual helps to create a better well-being community? By starting from the root bottom of the problem. Children. Guiding a child is a big responsibility and can be seen as a very difficult task because we're developing and raising soon to be functional person in a society. Hence, like teaching a bird to sing and survive in the wild, it seems to be easier than to raise a child. However, with appropriate ways, we can raise this soon to be adult person to create a safe place for a community to thrive. Whenever there's a problem, there will always be a solution to solve it. And to solve it, let's crack the problem with a proper solution. Children needs a safe and caring environment to grow to be a better person. In addition, children should be raised with good values and faith. Good values teach children on good behavior, separating them between bad and good. This can be a great guide to them when they are reaching teenage years. Faith also encourages a sense of peace and security, something many adults are missing from their life. A good routine such as a very good sleeping schedule can help their brain to develop. Routine helps children feel safe and secure. Furthermore, not only children need to be the key of this problem. The problem to this solution can also start with you. Remember, children might not listen to you, but they are watching you every time. That is when you take part in creating a good role model for them. It is okay if your teaching is not perfect. Every person has different style of parenting because different children perceive information differently. Be a good role model to them is one way to go. Children will always be making big people around them, so as simple as opening the door to others, throwing trash to a garbage bin, saying thank you whenever someone is helping will create a good mindset for them. A simple act can give a long-term effect for them. Say, what happened if none of this never got implemented early for these children? The possibility of their mental well-being can decrease throughout their lifetime. They will develop a more isolated and deviant personality and can affect either a society and a country. If we let their natural behavior untreated, it can be more likely for them to be a sociopath. Plenty of sociopaths in a society is a no good way to go and can be damaging. Moreover, uncontrollable crime and homicide can affect a community as well as a country. So, it is crucial to teach and treat children properly. It is important for their mental well-being because they can avoid any potential threat toward each other in the future generation. A loving household and a gentle parenting can set a whole new promising and a functional society in the future. Without Professor Fallon's discovery on how human brains and genetic works, we could still wondering the maze of how sociopath brain moves and how to avoid plantation of want to keep growing unknowingly among us. We also should acknowledge the term of domino effects. A great example of a domino effect is the story of how Jeffrey Dahmer's, the sadist murderer, father encouraged Jeffrey to bleach dead animals' bone. This event triggered Jeffrey's behavior to develop necrophilia and encouraged him to apply this act on real humans. Even a simple and unharmful act can make a bigger impact on child psychology throughout their lifetime, as quoted by Robert Fulghum. Don't worry that children never listen to you. Worry that they're always watching you.